Hey everyone, we're back. Like we never left. Back with my departed soulmate who left me here in California, Duncan Trussell.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Raghu. Good to see you. Sorry
I'm here, man. Yeah.
Well, everyone left everybody this year, didn't we? Like, that's what I realized in LA was I'm not seeing anyone. Like everyone's Zooming. What's the idea? Who cares where we could be? I could be on Mars. Wouldn't make much of a difference.
Yeah, right. That's true. Although hopefully we're heading in the right direction, but Pollyannish kind of maybe thinking, but
Erin has given up in the sense of like she's noticing that I've been saying every few months, I think this is the end of it. And she's like, come on, Duncan. You just keep saying that. Eventually, you're going to be right.
Eventually, we will be right, all of us. But it won't be, there is no back to normal. So, because normal is gone right now.
Well, that's to me, that you mentioned that yesterday on the phone. But that's a funny thing to even talk about is like that idea. The normal before the pandemic wasn't normal. You know what I mean? When was it normal? Like, at what point were things back to normal? You know, like you go back, some people say 2012, actually they were right. Because if you look at the world after 2012 and before 2012, two completely different worlds. Because prior to 2012, that's the internet is in more of an embryonic phase. You trace that back to pre-cell phone, when answering machines were high tech. When was it normal? All I'm saying is like, at what point was this normal? How do we go back to normal?
Yeah. That is absolutely 100% true. But I'm thinking, though, is for everybody out there, Duncan now has 2 small children. And I've got a couple of other friends, mutual to Duncan and I, that are part of the community that have either getting another one or already have a couple. And every time I was just with our friend John Faneuf the other day. He's having a new baby coming along as well.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I must have said something about there's no going back to the normal, what's the new normal. But really it led me to start thinking about the way in which you guys particularly need to nurture these children in a way that they're going to have a planet that is livable. Let's start there. And they're the hope, right? You are raising the hope for humanity.
Wow.
Right?
That's cool.
Yeah. Is it not
true? A lot
true?
of pressure to put. You know what's so funny is I remember asking Ram Dass about some, schmaltzy question about how do I be a dad? And his response was, I'm having, my son. I said something about my son. He's like, first of all, remember, that's the role. Those are all roles. Son, role, dad, role. He was so good at breaking it down. And that little bit of magic that you just cast there in that spell, we've created a role, haven't we, for my son, which is savior of the known world.
Yeah.
And also we've created a pretty intense role for me, which is to some kind of like, I've got to tend to the Messiah over here. And, you know what I mean? Like I've got to raise a Messiah now, Raghu. I got
to 2 of them though. Now, you keep just referring to one, but there's 2. 2
I know.
boys.
You know what? Yes. Dune is still in, yes. Yeah, he's still beaming down and it's beautiful. But both of them, I think maybe part of part of the shift is figuring out ways to let our children be themselves outside of our expectation. It was hard enough. Fuck, my dad wanted me to play football. Now I'm going to want my kids to save the environment. You know what I mean? Like, gee, it's football I wasn't going to do. And certainly God knows if you really do want your children to be this thing or that thing, don't act like it. You know what I mean? They'll both end up being lumberjacks.
Yeah, no. Okay, what I'm talking about what I hear spraying away the what?
You know what's so funny about this spray that I just sprayed is
what is it?
This was in the bathroom of our old house, and you would spray it after you poop. And now every time I spray it, it just reminds me of poop because the two have paired in my mind.
Yeah, right. That's great. No, what I'm talking about is what His Holiness has said repeatedly, the Dalai Lama, over the years, over many, many years, and that is humanity will be saved by our mothers. Okay? He said, I am, as you see me, I am as I am as a result of my mother's loving compassion. And the more that that can be expressed as we go forward, then that is what's going to be, he didn't say saving grace, but that is what is going to be the deepest affectation rather, on our on everything, the polarization, the planet, the discrepancy of rich and poor, all of it is by virtue of this development of compassion. So that's really what I'm talking about, and that is really what is happening in your little sphere and in the spheres of some of the other people that we're quite friendly with. So I think that, that is, look at him. It's obvious, right? He is an obvious example of of what got passed on to him by his mother, the compassionate, loving kindness. So, I think that's what we're talking about. More than trying to groom somebody to be the greatest environmentalist that ever lived. And no, it's just compassion, love, awareness.
So far, I have been attempting to, I just go back to like Chogyam Trungpa talking about the best gift you can give your kids is to be fully in the moment with them. So when I'm with Forrest, I try to stay off the phone and I try to just be, and it doesn't work a lot of the time. You know, it's hard to be in the moment with a toddler, because like you got to keep them from killing themselves or you're running in front of a car. But it's also not hard because they invite you into that realm where the realm of novelty, everything's new and it's beautiful. And from their perspective, the world is not fucked up. From their perspective, the world is perfect and wild and new. And for me, it's some kind of elemental practice as much as I can of being in the moment. And then also of like trying to practice something Trudy Goodman told me when I was telling her Aaron and I had been fighting and feeling really guilty about that, fighting in front of him, which happens. And especially during the pandemic, it's just, but not trying to like make excuses for getting in fights in front of the kids, and Aaron and I discussed it. Should we hide fighting from him? Should we have our disagreements like when they've gone to bed? And but what Trudy said was, it's not the fighting. They need to see you make up. It's learning that conflict happens. Sometimes arguments, sometimes, uncomfortable, sometimes not good arguments happen. But if they can see that resolution happens, then they're going to learn it's not the end of the world to get into conflict with somebody. And it's not, and it's just part of being alive and living with people. Because I think that's one of the things that some people had to deal with, the fact that their parents were miserable with each other, but were never fighting. They didn't know what was wrong or what was going on. It was being hidden. You know what I mean? Whereas like seeing conflict and then its hopeful resolution, I think that's something we can teach our kids.
Yeah.
But,
no, absolutely.
Again, for me, as far as any of the utopian bullshit aside, it is one of the brilliant things Trungpa Rinpoche said that I also hold close to my heart is whatever your ism may be, socialism, communism, whatever your particular utopian path forward to global harmony, if you really want to impact the planet, then find a way to be harmonious in your own house. And that, to me, was a summation of it all. The E equals MC squared of what I think a lot of the environmentalists who are rightfully upset and rightfully freaking out are looking for, which is, it's not enough to ask for the collective to do something. We need a pragmatic methodology that on the subjective level, the individual can utilize in the moment and day to day, which is, okay, you fucked up. You got in a fight. You got something, you and your wife or your brother and your sister or whatever, having disagreements. Okay, that's the world. That's the world. You're just experiencing the world because that's what's happening on the macro. Okay, well, that's great because that means you're like a little beaker. You're all the troubles of the world in this tiny little pixel. Now, what can you do to harmonize this? And not to keep, I'm going to stop this right now, but what I've noticed is it seems to be that trying to be right just doesn't seem to be a very
not
good
workable
strategy when it comes to finding harmony. I know, and
righteousness is the last thing that goes. I mean, one of the last things that goes. But I think I told you when we chatted the other day that I had done a podcast with people who are deeply involved with environmental activism. They have a thing called full ecology. It's worth listening to, actually. But their thing was, and this goes along with everything in terms of the tradition that we come out of through Ram Dass's lens, you've got to work inside yourself to think that you can add anything to any issue. And they went on about this and it really made sense about the way in which we are dealing with ourselves and the way in which we are relating with ourselves has so much to do with how we relate to the most simple of things, like what's going on in our very, very closed environment, and how are we just looking at everything that we do from moment to moment. The way we might ignore something, we ignore that inside ourselves. We're ignoring and not paying attention, and then we're ignoring and not paying attention outside ourselves.
Yes.
It's such I loved it because it really was so holistic, right? Yeah.
I mean, this is I think, and again, I have had some environmentalists on my podcast who are legitimately terrified. And so I understand, like people who work at NASA and understand how, the structure of carbon and like the tragedy of that shape in relation to the planet and the kind of fear you can only get from like deeply looking into a thing. And also the passion behind trying to get people to change, in the real legitimate anger and frustration when you realize like nobody's changing. Like I'm telling them exactly what is like the culmination of not just my own lifetime of research, but the culmination of like the lifetimes of so many different scientists. And wasn't this why we wanted science? Isn't this why we wanted science so we could say, look, we have to change. And if we don't, you don't understand, but nobody's changing. And so why? What's the problem here? And I think that one of the problems is that in the messaging of, oh yeah, you don't even understand. Like right now, if we just stopped, every single one of us stopped emitting carbon, we're still fucked. See, that's part of the message. It's like, oh no, you don't understand. Like we're fucked. Like we're fucked. And then, so in that messaging, you're suddenly you feel completely disempowered. And humans are all about power. There's no point. So then at that point we sink into nihilism or denial, and so nothing happens. So the idea is we've got to find a way on the subjective level for people to feel that their positive participation in the world is more than just pissing into the ocean. And otherwise, forget it. Nothing's going to happen, And so I think that a lot of people are working on those fronts in a lot of different ways, which is we need to get people to actually really understand how powerful they are as an individual, and not in some bullshit way, but you just don't know. The problem is you really can't understand how deeply you're impacting things around you, which is something I've been very interested in lately, studying quantum physics and the craziness that's happening on the quantum level of the universe, but from an ecological perspective. It's a really interesting thing, Anyway, the point is, I think what Ram Dass was so good at is sorry for this tangent, but we are the quantum level of society. You're a quark. I'm an electron. Aaron's a neutrino or whatever. But the point is, we're all part of this beautiful supersymmetry called society. And we're witnessing the symmetry in the things that appear on the world stage. The calving of the ice sheets, the wars, the appearance of demagogues or tyrants. That's the supersymmetry, the manifestation of the collective in the negative. But the implication of that is that the opposite is also possible. And that's where you get a Ram Dass. That's where you get a Dalai Lama. That's where you get a Neem Karoli Baba, which is that if there's these tyrant possibilities and war possibilities, then the opposite must also be true.
Yeah.
That's part of the symmetry.
Yeah.
And if it's not true, then we're doomed anyway. But we're doomed because it's endless war forever until the environment collapses. But where there's a thing, its opposite must exist.
Yeah.
So my point is, we have to find a way to engage people in an optimistic worldview that isn't delusional.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what you and I have been discussing over now, it's going on to 3 years, this whole thing about the complete grasping and belief in the me that we live with on a day-to-day basis. I do think it's a really great way to start a conversation along the lines of what you have just mentioned. How do we help to create a space of optimism, subjective optimism, where we believe that there is a way to positively affect all of these different very difficult situations, from the environment to the racial injustice to the inequities, economic inequities, and all of it. And I came across, and I think I told you this the other day, I came across a talk by Krishnamurti, who happens to live around the corner from me right now. I mean, his vibration, it's his Krishnamurti Center here in Ojai. And this talk was with I don't know what denomination he was. He was a priest. They never said, there was nothing on the YouTube thing that suggested who he is or who he was, whatever. And we'll put up a link, though, with it in the show notes here so people can watch it themselves. But there were some fabulous things. Basically, the whole thing started out with, is it possible to completely empty the mind of the me? That was the premise, right? Is it possible? So we can sort of pick this apart a little bit and add our own thing to it. Is there a process to rid the quote-unquote me And you know him. I mean, if you have not ever heard Krishnamurti or read any of his things, he was really a spiritual maverick in a way. He put down all of it. And there's oh God, I guess I got to tell this story. Krishnamurti used to travel in the foothills of the Himalayas where Neem Karoli Baba was.
Yeah.
And where we spent a lot of time with him in a place called Kainchi. And so they knew each other. And one day he came to the ashram, and our mentor, K.C. Tiwari, who we're just finishing a wonderful documentary film on called Brilliant Disguise, because he was really a powerful yogi dressed as a school teacher, a headmaster of a school. So he happened to be there this one day that Krishnamurti came, and Maharaji said to Tiwari, "Okay, I'm going to take him over to the river. You get just get a little bit away, but you'll be there." So he sat on a rock, and Krishnamurti and Maharaji sat down. Krishnamurti started regaling Neem Karoli Baba, Maharaji, saying, "What, you're like a wandering mendicant sadhu. What are you doing with all these ashrams? Look at all this attachment that you've created." Like that. Not exactly those words, but pretty much. And Maharaji said, "You're right. You're absolutely right. But it's the way I get my grub. That's how I get my grub," he said.
That's cool.
And then you looked at Krishnamurti and you said, "Gee, don't you go around the world giving talks and lectures? And that's the way you get your grub, right?"
Yeah.
So they had this phenomenal conversation, right? So Krishnamurti, who did not believe in gurus or anything like that, this was, he was the bottom line. He made Zen seem like a wild bhakti fest, actually.
Yeah.
So what he said here is that there is no process to eliminate the me, right? Everybody, and then he started to describe the me is everything that is going through that brain is the me. And he said, so he gets into it a little bit further, and he says, if I say by me, and I'm going to throw that me out, it's still that me throwing the me out. So this is where he goes, with, can the conscious mind examine the unconscious me and expose it? I pose that to you. Can the conscious mind examine the unconscious? So awareness, brings in all of the Buddhist concepts of mindfulness and awareness. Can it, expose that? Can it? And all right, you get a first crack at it.
Well, the discussion of me is really interesting, and it has popped up with some friends also as we're talking about the whole me thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I was having a conversation with one of my friends. They were asking something along the lines of, I feel like I'm too afraid to jump into the abyss. And it reminded me of a question I asked Ram Dass in one of the retreats. I just put it in a different way, which is like, you seem like someone who jumped off the diving board, and I feel like I've camped out on the edge. And he got this big smile and he said, "There's no diving board." Remember that? There's no jumping. It's all a, you're creating the structure. You're creating that in your head. And the abyss one, we were laughing about it because I was, that saying like, when you look at the abyss stares back. And I was thinking probably the abyss is looking at you thinking, fuck, look at that scary abyss. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
That's a terrifying abyss.
Yeah.
And like, so in the conversation of me, really, it's a kind of like sweet thing in the sense that you're excited to imagine that you're encumbered by this thing. You know, it's because if you are encumbered by the thing, well, it must be real, right? And then if it's real, then I must have some solidity. And then if I have some solidity, I've got a me.
Yep.
You know, that's the whole
a
whole
separate
thing.
me. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So no matter which way you go at it, which is the I've got to get rid of my me, or I'm gonna be me. You know, both of these things, if the central premise is, well, what the fuck is the me?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you his definition of the me, okay? The me is the entire conceptual ideation of oneself. It's the content of the entire content of my consciousness. Thinking mind, emotions, feelings, all of it, all the senses, it's the entire content. And as long as the content of my consciousness remains, there will be separation between you and me. And that is the key. I mean, when I heard this, I was like, okay, that's the key of what you and I have been talking about in terms of there's nothing that can happen in any way. And I mean just simple things like being happy, being able to be in a relationship, not just with a wife or husband, but in relationship to people. Nothing can happen until this is transformed. And now it just, and it doesn't happen. And I like what he said, that the idea that there's a process, like that's how we've been talking, when we've been putting together the ideas for from the movie of me to the movie of us. We've been talking as if there's a starting process and an ending. There's an end. There's a beginning and an end. And what he's saying, which is really fascinating, it is not about process at all. It is about perspective. That's how he ends up with this thing. Yeah.
But I mean, I do think it's fun. Like, I think that's kind of one of the cool and infuriating things about Krishnamurti is like, he really does make himself out to be some kind of authority, and he seems so charismatic. But it's like, okay, well, that's just because you said that's what the me was. Like,
well, wait, no. I mean, we have our own experience. Is not your experience that the content, the story you tell yourself is content, the way in which you look at other people and project them to be one thing or another based on memories or whatever. Yeah. That's all true.
But it's kind of like Krishnamurti drawing a circle, like in the sky. That's the sky. It's like, you know what I mean? I do feel like it's a funny, this is from my own exploration of the me stuff, playing around with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. There's another like wonderful encounter between Krishnamurti and Trungpa Rinpoche where Krishnamurti's doing his like thing. And, again, I'm not trying to take sides in something because both of these are like, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, so what, is this where spirituality was in those days? Was this what it was like? Cage matches between spiritual superstars confronting each other over like this stuff. Even with like young Ram Dass and Trungpa Rinpoche, these two young spiritual stars, and it's like, what's going on here? Like these confrontations between, I'm going to go to Neem Karoli Baba and say you shouldn't be doing this thing. It's like, because of so many stories of this with Krishnamurti, though I do have a lot of respect for him, his intelligence, his intellect. I always get I get an empty feeling from him, not in a good way. Just a kind of like,
I know what you mean.
What are you, like some kind of spiritual arm wrestler going around from ashram to ashram trying to get like in some embarrassing ego competition with spiritual teachers? It's an embarrassment. And because of that, for someone who is so wrapped up in challenging me's with his me, it's hard for me to take anything he
Okay,
says
you got to
regarding
get, but now that's exactly what this is about, content of consciousness. Who cares where he's coming from? In my little belief system of advanced beings, et cetera, there's not, to me, that's not, not at the level of one like a Neem Karoli Baba that was no longer living in subjective anything. I mean, because you can even see in this talk where the priest says, kind of catches him, okay, so you're saying you should be doing this, oh no, there's no doing anything, he backs off and all of that. But you know what?
You got to
Duncan,
watch the Trungpa Rinpoche one, because Chogyam Trungpa just sits there and like it's very quiet and just lets Krishnamurti be Krishnamurti, and like it really seems to start rattling him. Because he's like,
I don't know that.
His question to Trungpa Rinpoche was something about why I add meditation to people's problems. What's this meditation thing? And so he's like, he is just being very quiet, and he's sitting there. He's not really answering the question, but he's in the moment with him. And then it just rattles Krishnamurti because there's nothing he's looking for a fight.
Nothing to grab onto,
Yeah. But so regardless, I'm creating a fake Krishnamurti, and now I'm fighting with him. So I'm doing the same damn thing.
You're right in there. That's good.
Yeah,
Cage
it's
match.
like part of it. But I'm sorry.
Go.
One of the things Trungpa Rinpoche said that I love is, confusion is on the continuum of enlightenment. And so, or a condition of enlightenment. So in other words, the problem with the me circumference, however you want to draw it, is that what is the me happening inside of? And so, this is where I think the me starts running into some real trouble, in the sense that the regardless of whether your me is your Twitter bio, or your recollection of how your memories or how you tend to act in any given moment, you're always thwarted by the sort of non-continuity of the damn thing. It's always changing. You're kind of making it up in the moment. That's the problem. You're making it up. You're having to you're adhering to some meanest thing. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
no, absolutely. But at the same, he calls the me is the mischief of the world, because it's in living in separation. It only is it's in fear of losing stuff. It's in hope of gaining its preferences, its choices. It's looking at people by virtue of how is that going to help me or not help me. It's at the most subtle levels, so it is mischief. And
what does he think? Like it's a mistake?
No, but we're going to get there. But I just want to kind of parse this a little bit. But just to say about Krishnamurti, yes, he's a real brain. He's and he brings up stuff that's good to pull apart.
Yeah.
I mean,
he
just
challenges
really is.
Everything. It's cool.
Yeah, but and the rest of it, who cares? His thing about, you don't need to do practice, meditate, coming on to Trungpa Rinpoche about meditation. I mean, Trungpa Rinpoche, is a highly, highly advanced being, is, whatever. And I would be taking that kind of advice in terms of the ways in which he discussed, what meditation really is moving into the gap, for instance, between thoughts. And that is the way in which one can transform this deep grasping onto the story we tell ourselves, the me. But one of the things, so that advice is probably not the right word for him, because there's no advice, there's nothing. But being honest, otherwise one tends to deceive oneself. So we did this whole thing with Ram Dass, my friend David Silver and I, who I started the Mindrolling podcast with.
Yes.
And because I always felt like one of the biggest things I got from Ram Dass when I first met him, and then all the way through the years, was his ability for self-honesty, not to bullshit himself. And that was like, I got to say, that's right at the top few, if I'm to say what I got from Ram Dass over all those years, that was right at the very top few. The ability to do that, because there's so much fear around being on, which is why I wanted to do this whole journey with you around the movie of me to the movie of us. And I've said this more than once to you. I was getting so sick of, I had enough honesty, I thought, to see the sickness. The sickness meaning the mischief and I like that word mischief better than sickness, in terms of the of the transparency of the motivations, which are so self-interested, self-cherishing, and all of those great Buddhist terms. It just got to the point where got to do something, and in the doing of it, between you and I over these last couple of years, probably more. In the doing of it, we have come to be able to maybe offer something that allows us to be clear about how the effect of living in this kind of separate reality and how it's affecting us so deeply, and it's affecting everything around us. And so, self-honesty is a primary way in which we can really look at ourselves and not run away.
Well, yeah. I think that looking at yourself, self-knowing, that's the start of it. I mean, again, like, not to keep beating up on Krishnamurti, but come on.
Yeah.
He's like the grumpiest.
He can take it. I'll run over to his center after this.
He just seemed every single thing. I'm sorry, all the Krishnamurti fans out there. I haven't. It's just, to me, it's just like, I got to go with my instincts here. And I think the reason, whenever I like leave some encounter with Krishnamurti, just thinking like, no thanks, is versus Ram Dass, is because Krishnamurti of course he's going to use the word mischief. He's like a get out of my yard kid person. You know what I mean? Mischief. Whereas Ram Dass, he invites you to look at yourself like it's a flower. Look at all that karma. Look at that. And love it. It's not looking at yourself like, oh, this mischief here. Oh, this mistake of the universe. Oh, this aberration and the great cosmic everythingness that I am. Whereas Krishnamurti is like, the mischief of the world. Get out of town, Krishnamurti. No thanks. I like because if we really are going to be honest, let's talk about.
If we really are.
Let's talk about let's talk about that moment when you've lost control and you've become your worst you. Maybe it's in the moment. Maybe it's the repercussion afterwards when you find yourself sitting by yourself, feeling all of it. And I'm not saying the guilt or the shame, but also the righteousness and the power and all of it mixing together, and the mournfulness and the sadness. But in that moment where you weren't Ram Dass or Krishnamurti or whoever you imagine you might be in some incarnation, but were actually you encounter truth. And when you're looking at it afterwards, you're not seeing it like, oh, that's who I want to be. But if you for a second don't judge it, and you're like, this is my karma. This is who I am right now, for real. And it isn't right. It's not good, or it is mischievous, or it doesn't fit into the idea of a harmonious world. But it's real. And that's where I'm at. Here, not whatever the fuck I thought I was, but no, this is you, this is me, for real. This density, the anger, the potential to cause untold pain to those around me, the potential to lose everything, and all of it. Those moments, I think it's worth noting that thing is very, very powerful, and that thing is is not all bad. In fact, I don't know if it's bad at all. It just is. It just is.
There's no bad or good. It just is.
That's it. So when Krishnamurti is applying mischief or terms like that to the damn thing, I think that to me, it represents more of a bad mood than some like assessment of the thing. And I don't think it's going to help.
Yeah, anything. But I think, but to me, it's just tone. I mean, you who've been doing podcasts forever, and me, when I I learned this when I was doing radio way back in the day. It's all about tone. And, I can say, for instance, when something goes awry and I see it, and I can say, gee, there's mischievous me happening again. I can say it in a way that it is guilt, shame, judgmental, and so on, or I can say it in a way, and this is how the difference between Krishnamurti, probably what you're trying to say, and Ram Dass is have a sense of humor about it. Yeah. Oh, there's that mischievous little guy again. He's just trying to hold on, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I really think it's in the tone. Now, where this comes round to is interesting, because where he came around to it in this dialogue that he had with this priest was around perspective. That was the entire game changer. And it made me think, okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about, we've been using Ram Dass as our centerpiece here of somebody who was very much human and very much able to let go of the me in the moment. And when I first brought you to Ram Dass's house, I mean, you just were swimming in that, where there was no necessity to be or not be anything, and there was no judgment. There was nothing but just a spacious quality of a total acceptance.
Yes.
And he was able to do that. But the perspective, so like I just mentioned this tonal thing around the word mischief. Tonally, it can be just a completely bullshit, judgmental asshole thing. Or tonally, it can be a humorous, spacious thing.
Yeah.
So what's the perspective? So the perspective, and Ram Dass brought this out the last maybe 10 years he was in Maui, right? I think you were there for most of the last 10 years. And loving awareness. That was the perspective. He was saying, you easily can take a few breaths into the center of your being, into the center of your chest, and move that consciousness out of the me story into the unity story.
Yeah.
And from there, you can laugh about all of it and not take yourself so seriously, self-serious.
Yeah.
And you aren't judging yourself or anybody else. You're not moving towards the preference to be comfy or pushing away the tough stuff in life. Your perspective is the key. And this is what, he ended up saying this as well, Krishnamurti. I'm defending Krishnamurti now against you because you have defiled this extraordinary philosophical saint.
That's what he did to everybody else. You're allowed. He gave us all permission to do that. To me, the idea of unconditional positive regard, Carl Rogers, Rogerian therapy, it's because he couldn't, I think when Carl Rogers came up with the term unconditional positive regard, he knew he couldn't say love and be respected by academics, so he had to come up with another word.
I don't know him.
Carl Rogers, I'm okay, you're okay. Rogerian, well, so
I've heard that, but I don't know the name.
One of the great stories that they told about Carl Rogers when I was in school was that it stuck with me, and it's what Ram Dass was that spaciousness that you're talking about, and it's what apparently Neem Karoli Baba did, and I guess you could say Ram Dass is a reflection of that spaciousness. But some kid was about to get basically put into like a juvenile detention facility because he was misbehaving so much, but I think it was a very young kid. So it didn't make, it's like too young to be this like out of control, and everyone had tried everything. And so Carl Rogers had them bring the kid to him, and this kid walks into his office And the way Rogers describes this kid looking at him is like, this is a kid who's been to God knows how many therapists, already pissed off that he's got to go to another one, doesn't give a shit about any of this. And sitting on Carl Rogers' desk is like crayons and paper. And the kid says to him, I'm not, something along the lines of, I'm not going to fucking talk. And Carl Rogers said, oh, you don't have to talk. And the kid just starts drawing for the whole hour. Carl Rogers just sits there trying to hold a space of unconditional positive regard for this poor kid who everybody was trying to change. Everybody was saying, mischief, mischief, mischief. You better be better. You better be this or that. And suddenly he's in the presence of someone who's like, just do your thing as you are right now. The kid comes back, same thing. Comes back, starts talking a little bit. And then as the story goes, the kid, all the teachers are like, what have you been doing? What? He's a completely different person. And all that had happened was this genius was letting a child be themselves with nothing. And it reminds me of the story Ram Dass tells about Neem Karoli Baba, where maybe it's transmitted in a look or something, but within the look is, when do you want to do this? You want to keep reincarnating forever? That's okay. You can play the game for as long as you want, or as you don't have to play it anymore if you don't want to. I'm the non-playing of the game, but however you want to do it. And within that spaciousness, that seems to be where the transformation happens. And from the quantum perspective, not to try to put it into some pop science bullshit, it's really interesting the way at the quantum level, photons act as a particle and a wave simultaneously. But if you observe it, it pops into one or the other. But somehow the effect of observation forces it into either showing up as a particle, showing up as a wave. My physicist friends out there, I'm sorry if I fucked it up, but I spent some time watching various versions of this thing, which I believe is called the double slit experiment, where you shoot light through and there's a way to show it as a wave or a particle. But a superposition is the name for when something is these two seemingly completely different things simultaneously. And so in thinking about meditation, non-judgmental awareness, unconditional positive regard, I feel like it's that moment of allowing yourself to simultaneously be a me, the particle of identity, and the great ocean of everythingness. These two things somehow existing simultaneously, meaning that we're not in the act of some demo crew trying to knock a building down anymore. It's just part of what we are. It's the particle. It's not mischievous. Is a particle of light mischievous? No. But it's not everything we are.
Wait. No, come on. It's the mischievous part is, not to harp on this, but the mischievous part is just the self-interested part, okay? It's the part of us that wants to protect our territory, wants to take advantage in every way so that we can advance ourselves in whatever way that makes us feel more comfy, more powerful, all of that. So that's just that part. But you're absolutely right. This isn't about okay, we don't have that old me anymore. We're going to live in the undivided now, and where we recognize where, the particles and the waves are one, and we're not seeing them separate.
Right.
That's not a reality. We are human. We have got to operate. It's part of our humanness on a day-to-day basis. It's. Boy, there's a great story. I don't know if I can tell this though, and it fits. But basically, it's the idea of you are a me. You've got the me. You became the separate me when you were given a name, and then move forward, and you've got all of the grasping, all of the terror of the causes and conditions that have made you whatever that me is. And then you start to wake up and you start to think, okay, wait, there is another possibility. You do that through psychedelics. You do it through hearing a talk of Ram Dass or anybody, or Alan Watts. You do it through meeting somebody. You do it just you and I, what we've been doing. The way in which we're sharing this creates the possibility and the new perspective. And once you have that, all that happens in my mind is there's a lessening of that grasping.
Yeah.
That makes you so the feeling of separation is so powerful by this grasping that you have no way of having a harmonious interaction with the environment, with the people that you're in relation to, with your work, with any of it. And I think that that's what really needs to be understood. Krishnamurti needs to be understood. He wouldn't like that. That's what comes about once we step onto a path of knowing that there is something beyond this me land.
Yes, and like there's so many different methods related around sort of loosening the grasping or loosening the. It's really more like I think grasping is it's more like a muscle spasm. It's like when you have a really bad leg cramp, except you're the universe having the leg cramp, and it's it's painful. But for me,
it is painful. That's an important thing.
Cramping is painful. I mean,
and it gets to the point where you can't stand it. You know.
Well, but then also this is where we get into the really interesting addictive quality of it, like, or the subtle nuances of the thing, which is, again, like suddenly your relationship. So at first your relationship with yourself is naturally undifferentiated in the sense that you just think you're your mom, you're part of the ocean of isness. And then you begin to differentiate from your parents, and suddenly you're a you, and now you want things your way. This is the toddler situation. And then this continues to like crystallize until you become an adult, which is just like a sort of neurological thumbprint of various habituations that you've assembled as whatever you think you are. But what's been quite useful to me has not, well, first of all, what hasn't worked for me is the destructive approach, which a lot of people are into these days. God knows you get the emails, I do too, where people are like, I obliterated my ego on 3,000 micrograms of LSD. And the language is always war language. Obliterated, smashed, demolished.
Yeah.
And so the language itself demonstrates, number one, the recognition of, oh God, this thing called my me is causing so much pain that I want to go to fucking war with it.
Yeah.
But then also it seems to be a little bit of ignorance in the sense like, wait, so you're going to try to relieve yourself of the pain of the me by blowing it up, by exploding it, by,
so
dropping bombs on it? How's that going to work?
Great.
So
by the way, Ram Dass, he used to say, like he'd advise people, if you have dark thoughts, he first started out going, love them to death.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, it's too violent. That leads you into something that is even further polarizing.
Yeah.
Just
well, again,
love.
we're a war culture. We've been 93% of American history we've been at war. So we're like Klingons essentially in Star Trek. Like the way we understand the world is war and conquering and colonization. And so we take that approach against ourselves when we start having some recognition of our suffering. But yeah, anyway, the point is like that idea of confusion being a condition of enlightenment. I've always loved it, and I didn't understand it at first. I think I understand it a little more now, but I guess David Nichtern told me this funny joke, a funny spiritual joke, and there's a lot of shitty spiritual jokes. I'll probably butcher it, but basically, I think a student is on one side of a river His teacher's on the other side of the river. And he yells to his teacher, I want to get to the other shore. And his teacher yells back, you are on the other shore. And it's, do you know what I mean? So it's like where it gets addictive, for the addiction to really work, or the spiritual high thing to work, you have to create another shore. And now you've got the spiritual path. And now you're on a journey from the profane to the sacred. And within that journey, there's all these chances to get completely blasted, you know, because, oh my God, now you're having this cherished moment because truly you're melting like a sugar cube into the ocean. But then all of a sudden you're not anymore. And you're back down to your shitty self again. And then you're melting again and back. And now all you're doing is getting high. That's all you're doing is doing this weird form of spiritual
bypass, it's called.
I don't know if it's, I mean, like
it's bypass in that it's just feeding the same ego that was being fed before there was a spiritual path in one's life. And
I'm referring to this thing that was discussed in this book, which I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
It's by, hold on one second. It's called, let me open my Audible here. Wonderful, wonderful Buddhist scripture called,
what?
Oh God, let me find it. It's one of the key Buddhist, it's about bodhicitta aspiration. Oh yeah, it's called Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva.
Oh yeah,
Very
Oh,
wonderful.
I mean, that's incredible.
Wonderful. And he's talking about this bodhicitta idea. And, but he's mentioning all these different things you can do as someone who's waking up, or however you want to put it, or cultivating bodhicitta, moving through the realms. And one of the things you can do is actually cultivate this compassion, loving awareness, mindfulness to a certain degree, where you begin to experience all the awesome things that go along with it, which are, I think could best be described as little miracles all the time, or little synchronicities, or the relief that comes from, you know, recognizing you're just in a bad dream and you're probably going to wake up soon. It's really quite nice. But there's a possibility here within even that of intentionally going back to sleep, putting yourself back to sleep because of the thrilling exhilaration of waking back up. You essentially turn yourself into this fucking yo-yo. It's true. I'm telling you, people do it all the time. And I think part of the problem, so to speak, is that it might just be that this way that things are, all of the you-ness and all the me-ness and all the confusion is just the way things are. Doesn't get better. Doesn't get worse. This is it. And people, that's intolerable. It's intolerable. Because the great dream is there's this thing around the corner that once I do the chakra exercises and the purifications and the mantras and the thing and get the initiation and then get the thing and then get all that, and then somewhere around the corner is great hope. But what if it is hopeless in the sense, no, you're there. Deal with that. Holy fuck, it can't be. You mean just this? No. Then I've just got to be me. Then I can't exert aggression against myself. So now what am I going to do?
Wait, I like to think of this in practical terms as to that once the shift starts to happen. I've had a shift over many decades that I have noticed, and that is really only thing I am concerned about for myself and you and others that are around me is moving in the perspective shifts without, I don't even know why. Yes, I do practices. Yes, I've been with incredible beings. Yes, starting with Neem Karoli Baba and ending there really, and hanging out with Ram Dass as much as I did. But something happens, and it's due to something that I was going to tell this story a little earlier. It's called grace.
Yeah.
And something happens. But the practical application of it is certainly I am not reactive the way that I was earlier in my life. Period. Right. I am not. And it has helped me with the anger issues that I've carried in this life. It has helped me with just being more open, and I talk about that openness, that spaciousness, that self-honesty, the way in which Ram Dass talks about loving that quote unquote Krishnamurti mischief.
The mischief man is coming.
It's just a happening.
Yeah.
It is inevitable. It's an inevitable happening.
Yeah.
It is our human, the human reality is certainly this ego, me thing, and getting entrapped. And you're saying, well, people fall asleep so they can wake up again because it's so much fun.
They do.
And maybe that's, I would say that people do a lot of psychedelics just for the experience. That may be true, very
and
true.
And retreats.
Yeah, and retreats and whatever, meditation core. But again, it's all in, I say it's tone when we talk about a word like mischief that we've been talking about. It's all in, it's an honest intention allows for transformation.
That I love. The honest intention. That I love. And that took me a long time to get to that one. And I love it. And I think that's, if you are trying to find, and I'm saying hold on to something, but to me it seems more like a mnemonic device than anything, which is, in all the, you were describing, you were reading some beautiful Buddhist description of death as being like being in a blizzard, and or so dizzying and so lost. So I do like having an intention like that I can refer to when I've lost all reason or all wait, what was I even doing any of this for? What was I doing this for? I don't even know what any of this shit is. Just that little intention of okay, I'm going to try to be a little kinder today. Or it's like in Annie Lamont's new book, I believe she put just trying to be a little, God, I think their prayer was, God, let me be a little less of an asshole today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But just some simple thing like that.
Totally.
So that I have a thing. But then part of being less of an asshole, having really become adept in earlier years at beating myself up and hating myself and all the various methods I used to sort of hurt myself, it didn't achieve the goal of some kind of stable happiness. So, and if it did, I think we'd be living in a paradise world. In other words, if we're going to go back to we need some subjective methodology for improving our internal ecosystem, which maybe then will reflect into the world. I think the first step has got to be peace. We're in other words, we're calling an end to this war against the mischief person. Yep. The mischief man and I, maybe we're not going to get along for a while. And maybe the things the mischief man wants to do, like snort ketamine for the next 50 years straight. And what I need to do as what I need to do as a father and a husband and a provider, don't mix. And I'm going to be the one calling the shots in that regard, the father part, not the mischief man. Also, I understand why. And I know why that he wants to do that. I know why he likes it. And I understand why the addiction is there. And I get it. But all I'm saying is the war mentality, even using the language of war to refer to ourselves, is not useful. So to me, there's a big relief in what you're saying. The relief being, this is a process. You're not really quite you might not be in control at all. And that scares the shit out of the mischief man, because the mischief man wants to be in complete control of everything. But when you start recognizing, oh, wonderful. When I look back and think, wait, how did I even meet Raghu? Well, how did I get to end up at Ram Dass's house? Or why do I get to have pictures of Neem Karoli Baba all over my house now? Why do I get to have that? Or why did my child in the womb get to be in the presence of Ram Dass? Or any of these things? When I look back and think, what was the right thing I did? What was the thing to deserve that? And when you know what I mean? And then when you realize, oh, I don't know that there was, or if there was, there wasn't.
Okay, this brings up the story that's my third time saying, gee, I don't know if I should tell this story. Well, it's not. Should I
love
tell
your stories.
No, you don't. You hate all those miracle stories.
That was earlier. That was an earlier
Now
version.
okay, I'll give you a whole bunch.
I don't
but this
love
isn't
them,
about
but I
that.
like them.
This isn't about that. Well, this is a story that's been told many times, but it's so apropos to what you just said, what we've been talking about, because everything we're talking about is in duality. Right. It's trying to fix. No, don't fix. Krishnamurti said there's no fixing. There's no process. There's no nothing. There's just perspective that takes place. This is a conversation that Ram Dass had with Neem Karoli Baba in Allahabad one day many years ago, where Ram Dass said, Maharaji, is it not true that karma and grace are the same? How could they be different? Action and grace.
That's intense.
And you know the story, but Maharaji's no?
I don't remember it. Sorry to cut it off.
Well, it's good. I love people who have no memories anymore. I can tell the story and they act like they never heard it before. It's like so refreshing. Anyhow, he said, Ram Dass, I am not talking. This is not something I can talk about. He didn't say it exactly like this is not something that I'm going to talk about in public.
Yes.
And there wasn't anybody there except us, So later in that day, Dada Mukherjee, the great, by his grace, get that book. You want to know anything about Neem Karoli Baba? That's the book.
It is good.
I just threw that in there because it's true. He came to Ram Dass and said, Ram Dass, Maharaji said to tell you that Ram Dass and I understand each other quite well.
Wow.
So Ram Dass thought, okay, must be that they are, and he couldn't talk about it, and so on and so forth. Fast forward to not that long ago, maybe about 8 years ago, I was in India with Siddhima, who was with Maharaji forever and is a saint in her own right. It was our Indian mother, and just an extraordinary being. I asked her, I told her that whole story, and I said, what's the truth, Ma? And she said, it is true that they are one, but no, human minds cannot fathom that. You need to act as if they are not one.
Right.
Until the other thing happens, which is ineffable and we can't talk about, we have no idea about, where you lose complete subject-object and you are now just part of the universal divine presence, whatever the hell we want to call it. So in your case, in my case, how the hell did I end up in India? I'm saying the same thing as you. How did I end up in the pool with Ram Dass? I was in terrible shape. I say the same. I was in terrible shape. How the hell did I end up in looking in Ram Dass's eyes and going, wow, I trust this guy.
Yeah.
Period. And that pushed me to India. I had to meet whoever the hell it was that he trusted. I had to meet. And I went and did that. How did that all happen? There is something going on that is not able to be understood by our minds.
Well,
period.
It's and something outside of time.
We just, at one point, we don't try and figure it out. Actually, Maharaji said, stop trying to figure anything else. Don't try and figure it out, okay? And we stop. And at the moment we stop and surrender into the moment, and the Buddhists have so much great terminology about being in the awareness moment, being Trungpas between the gaps, in the gap between the thoughts, rather. We suddenly trust that. And once we trust that, then that perspective that we've been talking about, where we are not judging, we are coming from a place that Ram Dass called loving awareness. We are not judging ourselves. We are not judging other people. We are not trying to change things. We are not trying to have preferences. We are not trying to push shit away that seems. We accept the fact that we are human. We have suffering. We have to. The little me, Mischief, he's a sweet guy, actually. We're going to let him do his thing. And just like a little bit of loving will allow it to be less pernicious. And we can be a little kinder.
Love it. See, this thing, and I think it's really important to underline what you just said and stick it in your heart. Because it's like the moment that you allow yourself this possibility of there being something more going on, it's really such a wonderful relief. And
big time.
Because these moments happen in our family where all of a sudden, I don't know, like the other day, we're listening to Enya, and Forrest is like really listening.
Don't make Forrest listen to Enya. Come on,
you monster demon mischief man! No, give me a break. It was beautiful. My mom used to like it.
I know. I just had to.
She lives in a castle full of cats. You're gonna judge her? She's the coolest, cool as it gets. But like, we're sitting there listening to it. Forrest eating dinner. Aaron's breastfeeding Dune. Everyone's just in the moment, and it's all love. But it's it's like something has come into the room. I don't know what it is. It's the only place you want to be. You never want to be out of that place. We're all feeling it. No one's going to say it in the moment. No one's going to be like, oh, the transcendent has descended upon our house. Because it's outside of words.
It's dirty, even that.
Yeah, exactly. Or like when, after Ram Dass married Aaron and I, and Krishna Das is playing music and everyone is chanting, something came into the room. I don't know what that is. Same thing that came, but when it came into the room then, I remember thinking, well, that's just because I'm at Ram Dass's house, or I don't know, they know what that is, but I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to mess it up.
Little mischief guy.
Yeah, why say it out loud? But then now I know a little bit more about what that was that came into the room. And I know it's not limited to Ram Dass's house. I know it's not limited to me being around my family or not being around my family, but also I know I can't make it happen. It doesn't seem to obey my desire for it, which is another thing I love that Ram Dass said, which is if you desire realization, that's just another desire. Like you can't.
But there's intention, and you've been fulfilling the intention for so many years now. That intention is sharing. You absolutely want to share whatever has come to you that feels good or feels like enlightening or anything. All of the stuff, you have that wonderful crystal mind that loves to learn and assimilate stuff. And you have been sharing it on this, this is Mindrolling, but on Duncan Trussell Family Hour for years and years. You're the only reason I'm sitting here doing this right now with you. No other reason. So you are doing it. And it's that intention that it's, back to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's most simple, kindness is my only religion.
That's all we got.
That's all we got. That's all we got. And then, so there's nothing to do but share that. And the little mischief guy, Krishnamurti, we got to love him too.
Tell that to Aaron. But he's not. I think I can.
We're going to love him. We're going to learn to love him. That's the purpose. That is the point of this podcast.
I think if we can do that, learn to love this thing, and not bullshit love either.
Yeah,
but love it,
honest.
Unconditional positive regard, the way Carl Rogers loved that kid, or the way that Neem
or Mr. Rogers,
or Mr. Rogers, the real deal. But if we all started doing that. I do think that like we're getting the cart in front of the horse if we think that the way to stopping environmental collapse is through going to war with ourselves. It's just not going to work because we're part of the earth too. And a house divided upon itself cannot stand.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out a way to stop the war inside.
Yeah.
And then maybe from that, all the other stuff, maybe.
Absolutely, 1,000,000,000%. And we're going to end this podcast on that note. Stop the war inside ourselves. You know, I did a podcast with a fantastic monk from the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, Chung Lu, and he went on about that very thing. What happened to him is he was in Plum Village with Thich Nhat Hanh for 17 years or something as a monk. He said, I was the best monk you could ever be, doing everything exactly right. And he said, nothing happened to me. Zero. I didn't change. Nothing. So I dropped my robes. He said, that's when it happened of its own. I was just too much of doing. And he talked about while I was there as a monk for 17 years, all I had was a war going on inside myself. Yeah. Just what we were just talking about. And then once that left, then suddenly that realization came and that war started to evaporate. And that's what it's all about for all of us, as far as I'm concerned.
You're the best. I'm so lucky we're friends.
I love you. You're the best. Never mind. We have a mutual admiration society. Thank you so much, Duncan.
Anytime.
This hangout. I mean, you know, I don't even consider this a podcast. No. I mean, we do this, by the way. Folks out there, I can't tell you how many times we just get on the phone and we're just talking or whatever, and it gets into an extended conversation, and I go, well, this is the same thing as the podcast. We ought to record the damn thing whenever we get on. You know?
I do the same thing when I'm having a great conversation. I'm like, let's monetize this.
Yeah, right. But we're not gonna get into ourselves and go, you cheap piece of shit. We're gonna go,
get our grub.
It's just
how we get our grub.
Yes, lovely little mischief guy. That's what we'll call this, the little mischief guy.
Little mischief man.
Yeah.
All right, Raghu. Thank you for letting me be on the show again.
We'll throw some stuff up, everybody, you know, with show notes and links and all the stuff that Duncan taught me way back when. Every detail, including how to hit the record button properly.
What are you talking about? How to hit the record button?
Well, you gave me exactly the equipment, how to use it, and the whole 9 yards. You don't remember. You did it.
I don't remember that.
Guru.
Well,
my guru.
Yeah, because podcasting's so complicated.
No, but
not exactly like launching missiles into the air. I'm sure it's like you get a recorder and you need the internet.
All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Mindrolling on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com and get. Oh God, you know, Duncan, what's coming up?
What?
We've got this fabulous series called Under the Teaching Tree. The Ojai Foundation nearby here had these wonderful teachers come from Thich Nhat Hanh to Ram Dass to Joan Halifax to Gary Snyder. We're going to be presenting Gary. Do you know who Gary Snyder is?
The name's familiar.
Oh God, you're kidding. Well, he's still with us. He's he's in his 90s. Anyhow, Gary is just wonderful. So we have this whole series coming up that is I'm really proud to present. So yeah, Be Here Now Network. It's we is happening. Okay, we'll see you later.